Pelosi has said that if necessary, she would be open to moving forward with a commission that would only have the support of Democrats. Would the White House support that and have any concerns that the optics of that would ultimately undercut any findings?
Well, we're not at that point yet, and we've certainly seen the speaker's comments. What I will say, since you gave me the opportunity, is that the attack on the Capitol on January 6th was an unprecedented assault on our democracy. It demands a full and independent investigation into what happened. This is not a political issue in the president's view. This is a question of how we secure our democracy and the rule of law. So it's incredibly disappointing to see how many representatives have opted to turn this into a political issue instead of doing what's right for our country and our Constitution. And they still have the opportunity to do the right thing.
Just to follow up, would you be open to the possibility of a commission?
There hasn't been a vote in the Senate yet. Obviously, our hope is that Senate Republicans do the right thing, put partisan politics aside, vote in a way that supports the preservation of our democracy, of our Constitution. They have the opportunity to do that. If they don't, we'll have a conversation about it.
Just finally, there is a lot of skepticism on Capitol Hill that there will, in fact, be a bill that they'll pass the George Floyd bill by the anniversary of George Floyd's death next week. Has the White House accepted that it is all but an impossibility at this point that it'll pass, and what will the president do on the anniversary?
Well, I don't have anything to preview yet in terms of the president's schedule next week. We will certainly mark the anniversary as it was a moment that impacted millions of Americans and certainly the president on a personal level. I will say, Kristen, that obviously we are in close touch and we certainly defer to the expectations of the key negotiators here. And I would note that Senator Booker has indicated that there is good energy to the talks. Senator Scott has said that the key for us is to keep making progress. And we certainly support those efforts. The president talked about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in his joint session speech, put a marker down because he feels it's important to be bold, to be ambitious. And that's exactly what he feels we're hopefully working toward. Sure, go ahead.
So yesterday, President Biden told the Prime Minister that he wanted to see significant de-escalation yesterday and on a path to a ceasefire yesterday. So did he see that significant de-escalation, and does he believe they are on the path to the ceasefire?
Well, Caitlin, I would say we're not going to give a day-by-day grade here of the efforts, but I will say that our objective is to continue to push and encourage all parties on the ground. Israel, of course, the president has spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu, as you know, 4 times, more than any other world leader, and to start winding their operations down. We have seen reports of a potential ceasefire. That is certainly encouraging. And we believe that they are at the point where they certainly should be positioned to bring an end to this conflict. But again, as I started off conveying, we're also in a place where we want to bring this to an end as quickly as possible. That is clearly our objective. But we are only on about day 10 or 11 here. When we look back at 2014, that was about 51 days, and we're going to continue to press behind the scenes, press through intensive quiet diplomacy to bring an end to the conflict.
I was just wondering, because he did set the deadline of significant de-escalation yesterday, so I'm just wondering if they met that mark to his liking.
Again, I'm not going to give a public evaluation from the president of day-by-day actions. What I can tell you is that we are continuing to work behind the scenes through these 80 engagements with senior officials to advocate for, to convey that they should be in a position now to start winding their operations down, and that is what we are hopeful to see.
Okay, and what are the national security reasons for waiving the sanctions on the company and CEO behind Nord Stream 2?
Well, I know we made this announcement from the State Department just yesterday, and they certainly spoke to this from their end. We also put in place a number of sanctions, as you know, on Russian officials and Russians who were engaged in this in the building of Nord Stream 2 to send a clear message that we think that this is a bad deal, that it is a geopolitical plan that we feel puts our Eastern flank NATO allies and partners and Ukraine at risk. So that is why we put those in place.
But what's the reason for waiving the sanctions?
We certainly have an important, vital relationship with leaders in Germany, and we make a range of decisions through a range of global factors.
Okay, and my last question, about 15 days ago, I think, Michael Fanone, who is a D.C. Metropolitan Police officer who was there on January the 6th, was beaten, tased, they stole his badge, suffered a lot of trauma. He says that he still is living through. He says he sent you a letter about 15 days ago talking about the emotional anxiety that he still struggles with on a daily basis and saying it's time to fully recognize the actions of the officers on that day. So I was just wondering if the White House has a response to him.
I'm happy to check on the status of the letter. Obviously, the president's view is that there are a number of officers who lost their lives, paid a tremendous sacrifice on a day that will be a stain on our democracy for many years to come, and certainly many who survived. This will be a long-lasting trauma. I'd have to check on the letter and the status of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jen. You've said a couple times that you believe that the Israelis are in a position to start winding their operations down, and that's what the administration expects to happen in short order. Have the Israelis conveyed that they are going to wind down operations, and can you define short order? What type of timeline are you looking for?
Well, I will let them convey what they feel they've accomplished. Our views, we believe the Israelis have achieved significant military objectives that they laid out to achieve in relation to protecting their people and to responding to the thousands of rocket attacks from Hamas. And so that's why, in part, that we feel they are in a position to start winding their operation down. We continue to believe that they have a right to defend themselves, but this is where we see, again, our evolution of what the readouts that we're sending, of what we're conveying, what the president's conveying directly to the prime minister, is also a reflection of what we're seeing on the ground and what our officials who are working in close and lockstep with both Israeli officials, Palestinians, others are also seeing on the ground. So it's a reflection of all of that. But in terms of their assessment of that, I will certainly leave that to them. And obviously our objective is to work toward a ceasefire.
So there has not been a message from the Israelis to the administration that they are going to
I'm not
wind
going
down.
to read out their messages from them. They can do that. I can read out what we are conveying to them.
Why is the president not publicly calling for an immediate ceasefire rather than a path to a ceasefire? The de-escalation, not right now, stop this. What is the thinking behind that?
I think the president's been clear. He wants to see a wind down of this, of the violence, an end to the violence, and a winding of their operations down as quickly as possible and lead to a ceasefire as quickly as possible. So I don't think he's attempting to mince words there and what he hopes the outcome to be.
And are there any consequences if Israel does not show progress toward that de-escalation, toward the path to a ceasefire?
Our focus is on getting to a path to a ceasefire and bringing an end to the violence, to the suffering of the Israeli people, the Palestinian people, many people in the region. So I'm not going to get ahead of that to predict consequences. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead, Jenny. Sorry, go ahead.
On infrastructure, Senator Capito said that she expects a counteroffer from the White House tomorrow. Can you confirm this is the deadline? Is there a deadline for tomorrow to make a counteroffer?
We do expect. We had constructive conversations at a staff level on Tuesday on the Hill with Senator Capito, other ranking members, with Steve Burchetti and Louisa Terrell, Secretary Buttigieg, Secretary Raimondo, and we expect those conversations to continue tomorrow.
And then on another piece of legislation on the Hill that I know is a priority of yours, the Endless Frontier Act. Obviously, you guys care a lot about semiconductors. It seems like the negotiations have hit a couple hiccups, which is kind of normal. But at what point is the White House getting involved in smoothing this over? Because I know, this was supposed to go on a faster track than your infrastructure proposal. Are you guys involved at all through your Leg Affairs team, or do you leave this all to Senator Schumer?
We're absolutely involved. We're strong supporters of the Endless Frontiers Act, as was evidenced by the statement of administration policy we put out earlier this week, and we are hopeful and looking forward to signing it into law.
Are you behind the scenes pushing to resolve the hiccups that are currently holding up the
Our
bill?
legislative team is closely involved with members and with their staff on moving it forward.
And then one last one, also on infrastructure. If you can lay out what the White House and the President himself is doing to urge congressional Democrats to support his proposed tax increases.
I'm sorry, say that one more time?
What the president and your Leg Affairs team is, how that outreach, what type of outreach you're doing with Hill Democrats on the proposed tax increases.
Well, I would say the vast majority of Hill Democrats support raising taxes on the highest income and also on corporations, as do the vast majority of Americans. So I would flip that question around, and really the question we're posing out there is if you don't want to pay for these proposals, these historic investments in infrastructure, these investments in ensuring that we are making our workforce more competitive and rebuilding roads, rails, and bridges around the country, investing in broadband, if you don't want to do it by raising taxes on the top 1%, going back to the tax rates of President George W. Bush, raising them on corporations, many of whom never didn't pay any taxes in the last few years, what's your alternative? That's really the question we're asking. Most people in the country and in the Democratic caucus support raising taxes on the highest income and on corporations. Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. On infrastructure, given that there were staff level talks earlier in the week, can you say whether, just give us an idea if the ball's been moved forward? Has there been any, movement on maybe the pay for it? You just, talked about the importance of the president's proposal and asking Republicans to submit their own. Did they do that? Is there, how constructive was this, and how much did the ball move from where it had been prior to Tuesday?
I wish there was a daily ball moving monitor. You guys would probably love that too. It doesn't always work that way, as you know, with these negotiations and discussions with members and their staff. Our team felt they were constructive conversations. There obviously needs to be follow-up, as we fully expected, because negotiations and compromise require many conversations, sometimes back and forth proposals. We expect those to continue tomorrow, those discussions, and we're looking forward to that. But I'm not going to be evaluating kind of the percentage of progress after each meeting.
Do you expect the talks with Republicans to continue beyond tomorrow? There are some Democrats on the
We'll
Hill
see.
talking about it's time to just move on.
Look, the president's view and the view of senior members of this administration is that he was elected. The American people expect him to work with members of both parties, to attempt to work with members of both parties to get business done on their behalf. And he's doing exactly that. So we're looking forward to constructive conversations tomorrow. We'll have to evaluate how those go and what the next step is. But I'm not going to get ahead of the conversations tomorrow.
Just ask you one on the 1-6 commission and that hangs in the balance in the Senate. You said just a few minutes ago that this is a matter of preserving our democracy. If it's that important, is this an issue where the president is going to be lobbying members, picking up the phone, calling Republicans, and perhaps speaking to the country, using the bully pulpit to push lawmakers on this, or is he going to sort of save those calls for other issues?
Well, he's made clear what his view is on the mark on our democracy that was January 6th. And he's conveyed that clearly publicly on numerous occasions. I don't think there's any secret about where he stands on the commission. We also put out a statement of administration policy on this as well, just a couple of days ago. And certainly, as he's having discussions with members, if appropriate, he raises a number of issues. But I think it was important for us to convey where we stand in our view that this is an issue, a commission, that shouldn't be viewed through a partisan lens. And we don't think the American people view it that way either. Go ahead.
Jen, thanks. The Texas governor yesterday signed an abortion law that bans the procedure at 6 weeks.
Yeah.
What specifically is the White House looking to do? What specific steps will the White House take to try and protect abortion access?
Well, first, as you noted, but for others who haven't followed this as closely, this is the most restrictive measure yet in the nation, and the most restrictive a recent assault on women's fundamental rights under Roe v. Wade. And critical rights continue to come under withering and extreme attack around the country. The President and Vice President are devoted to ensuring that every American has access to health care. And now more than ever, he continues to support the robust agenda he put forward during the campaign to protect women's fundamental rights, including by codifying Roe v. Wade. Obviously, there are some actions that will be through legal processes and through the courts. Those are decisions for the Department of Justice and others to make, but certainly the president supports and believes we should codify Roe v. Wade, and that is his view, regardless of these backward-looking steps that are being taken by states in the country.
And Jen, both Pfizer and Moderna CEOs are saying COVID boosters could be needed as early as September. How is the administration preparing for that in terms of contracts with companies? What would that mean for efforts to send shots overseas?
Sure. Well, first, we would wait for the FDA to certainly make that official recommendation to the American public. I will say that when we purchased such a large quantity of supply and doses, we were also factoring in a range of contingencies, and that includes that potential. We don't know if that will be what the FDA concludes, but we plan for that. And in addition to the supply that we've already ordered, we're going to be focused on continuing to work with manufacturers to increase supply globally, of course, through our own manufacturing facilities, and we'll continue to build from the supply we've already ordered.
One more really quickly. Last week, 25 members of Congress sent the president a letter asking him to appoint a special envoy to Northern Ireland. Wondering if he has any plans to do that, and if so, what the